Hello, everyone. Henry Gordon Smith here, founder and CEO of AGRITECTURE, and welcome back for another one of our interviews with experts and innovators all across the world of agriculture. Today, I'm really excited to be here with Eric Lundgren, who is the co-founder and head of R&D for Supernormal Greens. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much, Henry. And I'm very excited of being here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. My colleague Nico recommended I speak to you about some of the innovative approaches you're pursuing to vertical farming. So first of all, tell us a bit about yourself. Where are you and what are the basics of super normal greens? Maybe a little bit of history first
Yeah.
before we get
Yeah.
into what you're doing next.
Yeah. Okay. So we're based in Sweden. We started the company around 9 years ago. Uh, Startup in a garage, scaled up pretty quickly. We started with a zip grow system. And
Zipco
then,
system.
yeah,
Oh
from
no,
with a
how did
zip grow
that
system.
go?
We had 45 units, so I think we were one of the largest in Europe at that time. So a lot of
I'm
manual
sorry.
labor. Yeah, a lot of manual labor, but a lot of
I'm not a
learning
fan
as
of
well.
Zipco systems for
Uh,
large scale and definitely not for indoor vertical.
no, yeah. I
Anyway.
mean, it was a good, let's call it school. So a good place to learn, and a good way of understanding what not to do and what to do as well. But we scaled from that 45 wagons or whatever you call them, units of Cipro systems into a full-scale 7,000 square meters industrial facility. We built that factory in 9 months and also changed all of the technology as well. So we took some of the parts that we really liked and then built away and automated quite a lot of the parts that was a struggle, working very manually. So our system is based on vertical towers as well. It's hollow towers with 24 plants put in from both sides. They are also connected in units, but now they go in a roof conveyor system all around the factory. So we have two different parts of setups in the facility. So we have a propagation area where we do horizontal layers, vertical stacked, and then we transplant from the horizontal layer into the vertical towers, and then let the plant grow the last part of the growth stage over there. We've spent most of our time in baby leaf lettuces, the easy to grow, easy to learn crops, but recently pivoted over to medicinal plants.
Right. And that's what I want to talk a bit more about. It's a really cool journey so far that you've outlined, especially around innovating in the tech, but now you're also innovating on the crops. So I'm here actually looking at supernormalgreens.se, and I just want to read some of it because I think it's pretty clear about what you're doing. We are transitioning from leafy greens to high-value botanical ingredients for cosmetics, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals. After nearly a decade of growing lettuce, we are moving on. Let us be clear, we're moving beyond salads. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about your choice to move from salads to cosmetics, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals. Break that down for us. What does that mean? What are you actually growing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's a struggle for all vertical farms when it comes to price points compared to conventional grown products. So, if you were to build margins and build like a nice economic setup for your vertical farm within leafy greens and lettuces, from our experience, you need to find a way to push the price a little bit to be able to get more for what you do. And we had that was pretty hard on our market. We're from Sweden. It's a small market. It's 9 million people. There are three large store chains owning the whole space, so to say. So we did some really interesting stuff with lettuces. We increased C vitamin in arugula, so the C vitamin became higher than you would find in kiwi. We introduced completely new plants, grew amaranths and other type of leafy greens that hasn't been seen in the market before. But frankly, it still came down to price. So while we were, let's call struggling and trying to like find a way to have added value in our products and that coming back in margin for us, the last 4 years we also spent time in R&D, with the medicinal plants or botanicals. And the thing that we have been focusing on already from the start actually is the way to stress plants. And when you stress plants, you can trigger them to produce specific phytochemical compounds, which in food adds more texture, adds more flavor, and adds more nutrients overall. And that's really cool. But if nobody wants to pay for it, you're not getting the added value from the benefits you're bringing. So when we did the same with the botanicals or the medicinal plants, we were able to increase the very valuable compounds, the molecules that you will find in some of these species, and increase them several folds. So as an example, we research a lot with Artemisia annua. It's a compound in that plant named Artemisinin, used for malaria vaccines, used in oncology research, dermatological applications. And that compound we could increase 9 times compared to a non-treated group. So it's actually the same thing as we did with lettuce, but in a market where you value the compound and not only the fresh material. So that's kind of the logic that brought us to take this decision. And last year, during 2025, we were able to get some nice proof points from the markets. We delivered our first export orders, and then by the end of last year, we decided to pivot completely into this market.
Thanks. That's a very clear explanation of why you would get into that and some of the steps to get into that. I want to talk a bit more about this specific idea of how indoor vertical farming, CEA, can actually, deliberately increase active compounds that you described, doubling this, increasing that, et cetera. Walk us, because some of our audience may not know, walk us through the basics of how do you do that? How do you actually control that? How do you actually drive that? How do you double something like vitamin C or
Yeah.
potassium, etc.?
Yeah. So I think it's worth going back several million years to like the splitting of life forms into animals and humans and plants, where the animal kingdom solved their issues by being centralized. So they have like one liver, two lungs, which means that they can take decisions very fast, move very fast, and as soon as there is a threat, they can get away from the threat by moving. While plants developed a trait for adaptation because they can't move with the same speed, so they need to adapt to the changes. And the way they adapt to changes is by producing all of these fantastic molecules that we need as humans to eat. So their defense system is creating specific molecules, and plants have a number of unique molecules in which they use to adapt or defend themselves in case of stress, for example. So the way that you want to increase these compounds is actually to create and control stress, a specific stress that triggers a specific mechanism in the plant that produces a specific compound you want. So in some plants that could be drought stress, for example. So when the plants feel that there is not enough water, they start producing some phytochemicals to adapt to that. It could be using UV or increasing the intensity of blue light. That often creates anthocyanins with coloration and things like that. Or it could be by changing or having specific bacteria or hormones in the water or applying that on the leaves, for example. So different ways that you, with very high control and definition, since you're in a controlled environment, you can specifically target those stressors and trigger the adaptation/defense that the plant has developed over millions of years. Yeah.
Very clear, very cool. There's been some early companies in vertical farming that actually explored this, but it hasn't quite taken off. I mean, I think one of the issues is the volume. When
Yeah.
we work with some of these pharmaceutical companies, cosmetic companies, the volume at which they need, is so significant that it can be quite difficult for high capex intensive systems like vertical farming, or what they may see and is not proven, or the fact that historically many of these vertical farming companies do something cool for a while and then they go out of business.
Yeah.
So, this is something we've seen before as a key challenge from the scale, distribution, basically the volume that's necessary for these companies to say, we're not going to source this from, let's say, nature outdoor spaces. We're going to source this from the potentially more efficient, likely more efficient indoor spaces. It's going to optimize our value chain, obviously all those benefits, but they still need consistency. They need
Yeah.
dependability. They need scale. So what are you doing to solve that problem? What do your customers say to you about that? Are you in a stage where you're sort of piloting and sort of getting that relationship going? What are they telling you about the volume that they need to have this be meaningful to their business?
Yeah, and to be clear, we've transitioned very recently, so we are still learning a lot. So every meeting with potential clients for us is us understanding what they actually want. But one thing that has been clear from the beginning is that like we really need to understand where in the supply chain we want to come in and what we want to offer. So if you want, for example, to replace something simple as Melissa, you will find it on the market for prices on dry material that are lower than lettuce on fresh material. So you really need to understand like which plants to which market with what specifications are the ones where you will get paid. You have some macro trends or challenges in this market, the nutraceuticals and the cosmetics, that you don't find in food. So the regulations are much higher. The concentrations of heavy metals are controlled batch by batch. You have much stricter pesticides regulations. So I mean, there's a lot of things that affects all conventional growing, not only food. That is also a big struggle for these companies. And then there's a primary mechanism that is very different compared to food production. So when we sold salad or lettuces, it was like price were on weekly targets. So suddenly, one week to another, there was a big supply coming from Spain, and the prices went down. Um, so it was hard to predict. While in these markets, they spend years of developing, years of doing formulations, and then finding the claims. And when their product is ready for the market, instead of buying them week by week for the price that is the best, they want to secure the life chain of that product as far as possible. So if you've made a formulation over 3 years, of course, you want secure supply for years as well. So securing the supply has been like one of the most important things or the challenges that we hear, that we have this formulation based on this plant, but that plant is really, really hard to find, or all of the batches that are coming in is being neglected in quality controls because there's too much pesticides or heavy metals. So actually solving some of those problems is like one of the
Matters more than
hardest
the
things.
scale? That's mattering more to the customers than the scale?
Okay, so scale is also really important. Again,
Yeah.
which plants you choose to produce. So if we were to go in only to nutraceutical space, like even a small player, their volumes that they need would be far too big for us to produce. Even though we see ourselves as an industrial indoor vertical farm,
Yes.
it's nothing compared to acres of conventional
Yeah.
farming. So we really, really try to target specific bioactive that is important for formulations, but it's not the bulk of a formulation. So let's call it precision supplements rather than conventional low commodities. Specific bioactives for cosmetics, for example, that they want small volumes on, but is a very, very important part of the formula. So it's deciding out of all of these thousands of plants available, the ones that you will be big enough to supply, even to players that are rather large in scale. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so Eric, you've been through it. You've seen the ups and downs already that have occurred in vertical farming in particular. You know, people are saying all kinds of things about the future of vertical farming. What's your take in the next 10 years for vertical farming?
Oh, in the next 10 years, trying to answer anything for the next 10 years in this timing is hard. I think for vertical farms, a lot of the fundamental challenges will be solved. So if we look at the electricity prices, there is nothing saying that in 10 years electricity won't be cheaper than it is today. It's all pointing in that direction. If you look at automation and like understanding price for labor, etc., like all of those macro trends are trending down. I think the biggest challenge is, do we survive from now up to 10 years? If we get to 10 years, I think a lot of the challenges that we see today won't be there. Uh, I think the biggest and hardest challenge this industry has had is overpromise and underdeliver, and let's call it some kind of hype. So it got too hyped. The promises were too big. The investments were too big. Um, so I think the most sane that could happen now is we take down the tempo a little bit. We start looking at it more pragmatic and build slower but steadier with lower risks. I could I could see a lot of companies that does that, I think will still be here in 10 years. And then you have the opposite, which means that you go very high precision, very high margin markets. I think everything in between, if you don't decide what you are, will be very challenging. Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to share with us, Eric? Are you looking for hiring people? Are you looking for any opportunities you'd like our audience to be aware of?
I mean, I'm always trying to hire good talents. So a shout out on that one. I'm building the R&D team now as well. So people that I mean, it's good for the companies that are still around. This is the first time in my history where you can find people that have 5 years experience of running CEA or have 10 years of experience of working in similar industries. So I'm just happy to get connected with everyone that have worked in our industry before.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, you heard it here, Eric Lundgren from Supernormal Greens, which I love the name. I think that's really funny and cute. So we're going to be watching you as you move from the typical leafy greens into these specialized essentially, ingredients for pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, etc., and cosmetics as well. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how you can deliver this high value product and sort of help us cross this bridge. Since we haven't really seen a lot of at scale
Yeah.
production of that, we are eager to see some success in that. Thank you so much to everyone for paying attention here today. This is just another one of the conversations we host here at AGRITECTURE, in addition to all of our free blog content. Just want to let you know that this is not sponsored content. When AGRITECTURE is sponsored content, we note that specifically to our audience by saying in partnership with or sponsored. This is us sharing information that we find interesting with our audience. As always, we invite you to subscribe and like and share. And of course, if you have any feedback or questions, reach out to me or Eric specifically. Thanks for following.
Take care.